morning, good afternoon, Andrew Bidlack. And Andrew is on the East Coast. Where exactly on the East Coast?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, and I am in Los Angeles, California. And Andrew and I have worked often together at the Dallas Opera. Andrew is a tenor. He's a Mozartian tenor, but he has done also a lot of contemporary music. He has sung in all regional American companies, but also at the Met, also at Covent Garden. And the last time we worked together, I believe, was Everest or Moby Dick at the Dallas Opera.
Yeah, it was either the Everest for the Opera America conference. I think that might have been the last one.
Might be the last one.
Yeah.
And it's always a pleasure to work with Andrew. He's such a nice, supportive colleague, very, very, very well prepared, amazing dramatically and vocally. So, Andrew, first question, which is a question I have to ask to everybody. How did you live the pandemic? What did you do? What did it change to your routine? And how do you think it's going to affect your future?
Well, as you know, I have a child. I have a 7-year-old daughter who is, as my jobs were lost, her school became virtual, and that has taken up a significant amount of time as the school district figured out what they needed to do with the classroom and having us teach our kids, basically. So I'm glad that she's not in high school and I'm trying to help her with algebra or something like that. She's in second grade. It's much easier math. That has taken a significant amount of time. You know, as their schedule has changed, my schedule certainly changed. You know, when I was home, I had a very set routine, where I do yoga, walk the dog, practice, you know, work on music. And that has just been completely turned on its head because of the responsibilities with her. Like, now I have to get her on her class, and then she shows me her work, and I have to kind of grade it before we submit it to the teacher. And, you know, over the months that's changed. The times have changed, and so my times have changed. So the times that I will practice will be a different time. And, you know, it's been a nice distraction. I'm very grateful that during this time I've been home, and then I have a family to be with. I'm not alone somewhere. But, you know, it's been devastating. It's been almost a year since I've left Baltimore, and, you know, one job after another would go throughout the year, and you get ready for one job, and then you find out about a month before you're about to leave that it's gone, and okay, and you just have to go through that stage where you keep your eyes on the future and move on ahead. And that's, what else can you do? And that's kind of where I'm at right now with it.
Right. Right. Let's go back a little to you teaching your own daughter. So is she, I mean, a lot of my friends, I see that with my nephews, you know, the online teaching is a torture, not only for the kids, but also for the parents.
Yeah.
But I mean, is she resisting it? Has it made your relationship closer? Has it threatened the relationship? Do you have time to play together beside teaching? And, you know, is there any blessing in the time you got with your daughter, or was that totally poisoned by the online teaching?
No, absolutely. The if there's a silver lining from this experience, it is that I've spent time with my daughter that I wouldn't have otherwise, and we've become like extremely close. Right. And I love our relationship now. The teaching actually has gone surprisingly well. You know, I was expecting, you know, just butting heads and just, I don't want to do that, or you're not my real teacher and everything. And when this whole thing started, she had a teacher named Mrs. Thomas in first grade, because it was last year. And I was like, you have to understand, right now I'm just like Mrs. Thomas. So you have to, you know, I'm your teacher now, and we're going to go through our assignments just as if I were the teacher, not like I'm your daddy or whatever. And somehow that worked. She's young enough that I tricked her or something. And of course, we have lots of time to play. I've started teaching her piano, and because I want her to be able to do that and read music, and we have more time to do stuff like that. This summer we were playing catch, and I was teaching her how to throw a ball, and she learned how to ride a bike over this time, and she just got a scooter that she likes. So that's the silver lining. That's yeah, it is. It's not been all misery. I'm very grateful.
Right. No, that is wonderful, and you are young enough to know how a computer works, because I have friends who just they can't even get on the class itself. And so
it was tricky at first.
It's nightmarish. Did you learn anything by teaching? Even if she's 7, I mean, is there any class like you say, oh my God, I didn't know that? No.
Patience. Patience. I learned a lot about patience.
Okay.
Yeah, and about positive reinforcement and stuff like that. And that, seriously, that was a real lesson.
That was the lesson.
Yeah.
You are teaching her piano. You posted. I saw that you posted yourself playing on the piano. You actually injured also a finger at one point, if I understand correctly. So that means was piano your first connection with music? What was your first connection with music?
It was. I started playing the piano when I was 5 years old. I was very lucky in that both of my parents were big into classical music and opera, especially my mom, who is Italian American. So I grew up listening to Pavarotti, and she was a classically trained pianist herself. So she was my first teacher, actually, which was mixed success, because
first teacher of piano or
of
singing?
Piano, yes, of piano. So so she was my first teacher. In fact, watching her play was one of the things that inspired me to want to learn the piano and I wanted to be able to do that. And of course, I was hit with the reality as a 5 or 6 year old that it takes a lot more work. It takes years, and it's really hard, and you have to start with really frustrating basic things. But
and then, how did you evolve from piano to singing? Was it later, or were you a boy soprano too, or you waited till your voice changed?
It was much later, actually. When I was for my 16th birthday, I got my first guitar, and I really loved playing guitar, and I played in a couple little bands and rock bands and duos with my friends, and that's when I first started singing. And this was like kind of late in high school, and I could always kind of do that like high floaty thing. It was always obvious that I was a tenor at high notes. And I was encouraged to audition for the choir in high school, and that's where I really started singing. I started taking voice lessons then around age 17.
And was it natural, or you said, oh, that's not for a boy like me, or was there any conflict there, or it was, oh, I play piano, classical music is cool, I should do this?
By that time, it was cool. But when I was younger, I was obsessed with soccer, like when I was 10 or 11 and 12, and I convinced my parents that I wanted to stop playing the piano, taking lessons, and I regret it severely. I mean, it was a really bad decision on my part, but I was a kid, so what are you going to do? It wasn't cool. It wasn't as cool then, but I kind of picked it up again when I was starting high school again, and I just loved playing. And I was actually playing not because I had to, because I wanted to, and that's where that all started. So by the time I was in high school, I wanted to sing. I wanted to be on stage, and especially playing guitar. I actually started college as a classical guitar major, which I lasted for one semester, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna. I was better at singing.
And then when did you decide, well, actually, this is serious, I have some talent, and I want to try to make this my profession? Was there a defining moment, or it kind of grew on you gradually?
I'd say it grew on me gradually in high school. I really wanted to be a jazz guitarist. Like, I was obsessed with those guys, and that's what led me to the guitar major. But I knew that I wanted to do something with music, performing specifically.
Okay.
I wasn't a music ed major or anything, even though everybody told me that was the smartest way to go. I went and got a performance degree and eventually in voice. And kind of when you don't really, I didn't have a plan or anything. You just kind of go and you get
Right.
better and you meet people and you get cast in things and you get lucky, frankly, and
Okay. And
that's good. So
okay, and your voice, so you train your voice naturally. How did you get your first gig? I mean, you were part of the San Francisco program, the Merlot program.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I didn't go to grad school like most people. I was in Philadelphia. I finished I went to two colleges, but my degree is from Temple University in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I was training a lot with the guys at Academy of Vocal Arts who really, frankly taught me how to sing. That was when I really got some great training. And I auditioned for AVA once I was done with my undergrad, and I didn't get in. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to move to New York. So I moved to New York, mainly because there was a teacher there named Ted Puffer that I really wanted to study with. And I took a lesson with him when I was in Philadelphia, and he told me, because I wanted to go to Manhattan School of Music. That's all right, because that's where he taught, and I was thinking that's what will get me to New York, because I wanted to live in New York City since I was like 6 years old and saw it on TV as a kid, and like I lived in
Okay.
Colorado at the time. Yeah. Um, so he was like, Andrew, just move up here, get a job, get a temp job, and I'll take you into my studio and save your money. And that like sort of planted that seed in my brain, and that's what I did. I moved up to New York. I temped and all kinds of jobs, and I lived on West 90th Street and paid for my lessons, and I did not so I didn't go to grad school. And in between all this stuff, I went to a lot of young artist programs. I was in the young artist program at Sarasota Opera and Santa Fe and Des Moines, and eventually I was in the Marilla program in 2007, also Florida Grand Opera. But that summer I went to Marilla, and as you know, Marilla is kind of an audition for the Adler Fellowship, which I got, and that was sort of helps me make a lot of connections that put me to the next place.
Great. That is terrific. Where do you define your fach, your voice today? I mean, are you a Mozartian tenor? Are you a tenore leggero? Are you what do you find a category for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have mixed
Or you
feelings
don't
about.
want any category? You just hate the
Well,
question. Just push back if you want.
so I think that I have mixed feelings about Fox, and I think that's more
Okay.
about like what casting people want to say about you.
Yeah.
So if I were to say what I think they say about me, I think I'm a Mozart tenor. Like that's my center really. And I've sung a lot of Rossini, and I've sung some of the like Tonios and Cenerentolas and some of those crazy high things. But I never thought of myself as a person that did that naturally. Like there are some guys that their voices, you can just tell like where their speaking voices. They have amazing C's, and it's just like, for me, my tops, it was work. It was a lot of work, a lot of banging my head against the wall, frankly. But yeah, I'm getting older now. My voice is changing a little bit, but I'm still Mozart bel canto. I think that's where I live. And then of course, as you mentioned, that's translated into a ton of new rep, and that's been a huge part of my career too.
Right. I mean, you are just amazing in this contemporary repertoire, and because you bring such an integrity to it, and you have this beautiful timbre of yours, but it becomes something that's not about. I mean, that's my feeling. It's not about the beauty of your voice. It's about how that material can translate the character and the action in the most musical and dramatic way put together. And so that's, and you're right to actually resist the fach, and you don't want, on the other hand, I suppose, to be typecasted as contemporary music tenor, because that's cutting you from so many awesome jobs
Right.
on the side.
I mean, a perfect world is, you know, you'd have a mix. But let's be frank, at this point, like, you want me to sing something? I'm here. I'm ready.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, this year, like, I'll do whatever you need.
So,
But
so
yeah, I mean, so the contemporary stuff like really resonates with me. I mean, the stories that are told through that repertoire resonate with me, and I think that
mhm.
I've always been interested in contemporary art and theater, and you know, I think it's really important as an artist to be able to say something about the art that's happening in your lifetime, to put a stamp
Mhm.
on it. And when you're doing new pieces, you get to put a stamp on something or
Mhm.
create something that is more personal and it's more your own, because it has to be, because no one's done it before, or it's been done only a handful of times. So I really enjoy that about it.
Right. What do you think is going to be the impact of this crisis on our industry, on our careers, and what you plan with that, if any?
Well, I think I mean, I remember the first recession that after 2008, 2009. That was right when I was coming out of I was right in the Adler program in the middle of that, and I just remember how that affected our industry, like how many companies closed.
Mm-hmm.
I remember December in New York. You'd spend 2 weeks, at the first couple of weeks in December in New York, doing 5 auditions a day. It felt like, and then that just ended in 2010, 2009, because nobody was
Was
coming in.
hiring.
It's like the budgets just went. And then I think I'm worried because this one's so much worse. The effects of the budget company on these companies is so much more profound and deep, and I think lasting. So, I mean, I think everybody's going to do everything they can to come back. Um, I'm so thrilled that the vaccines are coming, and we're turning a huge page today, obviously, and just things are starting to look different. And I think we've reached the bottom. So now we're hopefully coming back up. I think it's going to be a while before we're all having the schedule that we had in December 2019, but people
Right.
are hungry for this, and we're hungry to do it. And that's
Right.
what is important. And that's what we
Right.
need.
Well, I think that there will be always a place for opera. There will be
Yeah.
always. I mean, it's essential. You need to really nourish the souls as much
Mhm.
as you need to cure the bodies or protect the health of people, and the communities know that it's an essential and non-negotiable part of their fabric. So I think resilient artists, will find a place. But the whole thing is going to change. The whole model is going to change. Um, and we need to be prepared for it. Are you teaching? Are you teaching online? Do you have students at all beside your daughter?
I'm not actually. And honestly, I'm a little intimidated by the idea of
Mm,
teaching. Honestly, I just think that they're so I've never done it. And everybody's like,
mm,
"Oh, once you do it, it's just like you'll know what you're talking about." But I've never done it, and sometimes I hear people sing or hear a young singer or something like, "What would I say to that person, or how would you fix it?" And
mm.
you know, I have a few ideas, but
So
it's not my comfort zone. I mean, I'd be cool teaching 6-year-olds piano. I'd be fine with. But yeah, so I haven't done teaching. It's taken a lot just to keep my own practice schedule up. As you mentioned, I had a pretty severe hand injury this year, and for a while
right.
I severed the flexor tendon in my thumb and some of the nerves, and I had to have surgery in August and 9 or 10 weeks of physical therapy. And it's much better now. It's different. I can't really bend my thumb like I have to have compression tape on it still. But so I mean that took up a huge chunk of my day. Just doing the therapy. Once I was better, getting the piano back a little bit, because that was actually
Mm,
part of my therapy too.
mm-hmm.
And I intend to get back to work. So I don't want to take on a bunch of students and then
Correct.
be like, bye. Because you know, it's a long relationship that you establish with your teacher, and it's an ongoing project that never finishes. So I'm not ready to do that yet, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm sure a lot of singers would be happy to have your advice, as you are such, you know, an accomplished artist. But I understand the notion of commitment, and a lot of your colleagues are just now doing Zoom classes after Zoom classes, and these people will be hanging there with nothing once if it restarts, once it restarts. You're talking about, you know, the relevance of contemporary opera and how much you feel you contribute to some kind of social discourse and so on. First question, did you train as an actor at all, or that came naturally in your development as a singer? And how important is for you the dramatic part of your role when you are on stage or when you prepare a role?
Well, I never took standalone acting classes.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of training that you get through young artist programs. They'll bring in people that will help you with your acting specifically, and so that was basically where my training comes from, you know. And
Right.
I worked on it a lot. I spent time in front of a mirror or whatever, especially when I'm doing a part like Everest or whatever, which is very, you know, I think there's very much involved with your physical movements and how you look in a show like that, which you're trying to convey, not just standing and singing, but like climbing mountains and struggling with ice axes, stuff like that. So you know, that's kind of where I go. And of course, I've worked with a lot of incredible directors that spent time on that kind of character development, like Lanny Folia or David Pountney. I did a world premiere with him a couple of years ago. That was the one in Covent Garden in Wales. And you know, I learned a lot from him because we talked about the text all the time and conveying the text, and it was really, I was very lucky, and that's where I've gotten my acting training.
Right. How do you prepare for a role? And let's start, let's say, with a repertoire role. I mean, you do a magic flute, you know. I mean, the first time you did it, how did you prepare it? You go back to it today. How do you prepare yourself for that?
Well, the first thing I do when I get a new score is I get a highlighter. I go through like probably every singer, and I go through and I highlight the whole part, and like, oh, there's the high part. Okay, that's gonna be hard. You know, and then I.
But why do you guys do this? Just to make sure you don't miss any page, or to have a notion on how long it is, or just like I erase it by underlining it? I mean, what's the logic here?
All of the above, especially to make sure you don't miss something, because that's kind of my nightmare. But also, you get a sense of like how big the part is, like how you want to work on it. You know, when I was younger, I'd always work front to back, and I'd show up on the first day of rehearsal. Like the first chunk is like solid, and it kind of diminishes as you go on. And I think now I've been able to sort of look at the entire role and say like, okay, which part's going to take a little more bandwidth, get in there and everything, and sort of go that route. But and also there's something psychological about, like, you know, seeing my part in yellow. I don't know, that's just an important first step. And of course, if it's not in English, you know, I work a lot on the translation. You know, I did a lot of like Russian stuff lately, and that's a lot of work.
It is,
because I think, I mean, I can't memorize it if I don't know what I'm saying. It just doesn't stick, not at all.
Right,
you know?
right. And you need, it's not only about the right pronunciation, it's about what each, I mean, the stress on the syllables, and then the development of the meaning, not just the meaning of the phrase, but how that word actually is the inflecting point of the meaning of the phrase, and it coincides or not with the vocal line. And this is, I mean, even when I don't speak Russian, and I don't read easily Cyrillic, and if I have to conduct a Russian opera, I need to dedicate much more time to prepare for it, because I mean, of course, you can fake your way through it, you know, especially as a conductor. But if you, but as a singer, you cannot. And if you want to do a good job, you need to be in the inflection of the language in order to accompany. And when you accompany in opera, you accompany words. You accompany the tension and release of a sentence, and mostly it's words. It's not the harmonic tension and release only. It's the tension and release of the words themselves. And so you need to understand the curve of the phrase. So I guess it's the same thing for you. And then, do you go at the piano? Do you work on the pitches at the piano? Do you listen to a lot of recordings?
I mean, yes, all of the above. I like to start on the piano, and one of the greatest gifts that my mom ever gave me were those piano lessons when I was a kid, because I can play through most of this stuff. Not like I'm ready to accompany a rehearsal or something like that, but I get the gist. You know what I mean? To like get the true skeleton and everything of the score. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I mean, there's, especially when you're talking about traditional rep, there are traditions that are not innate to me as a 20th century American. So you've got to listen. You've got to understand those traditions, and it's wonderful how many recordings there are of all this stuff. I mean, you can go on YouTube and find everything. It's great.
Right.
So that's a big part of it too. And then of course, like, just practice, memorize.
And how much singing do you do? How much vocal, trying again and again to put it in the throat do you have to do?
I mean, it depends how difficult the piece is, I guess, especially if it's really contemporary, like, where there's significant atonality or whatever. I know in my brain what the notes are before it's in my throat. So I gotta sing it in, even though I can, hum it. But just like it takes there's another step adding actual technique and voice onto something like that. So I mean, ideally, by the time I'm really working on the music as a singer, I've got it sort of close to learn/memorized.
Right.
I find that I get in a weird place if I'm just like kind of sight reading a score and that I'm learning. If I don't know it yet, it's just kind of a waste of time.
So you don't sight read or search full voice. You wait till it's in your brain first.
Yeah, because I think you got to know where you're going, especially on some of these like high things. You're not just gonna like pop out a random high note.
And so for contemporary opera, obviously you don't have many references. You might have the little files that the composers send, which are usually extremely depressing. So how different is that process?
Well, they certainly help. I mean, I appreciate those MIDI files.
You do. Okay.
They've gotten better over the years.
They got a little better. They drive me nuts. They depress me.
I'm sure, but at least gives you a sense of like what it sounds like all together, because you can't really, I don't know. I mean, it helps you, especially if you're drilling something for memory, like if it's some long page. I mean, it's just like you take everything out except the sound, and like you see that's where it's the most useful to me. I mean, you have these big ensembles that repeat over and over in some weird ways. It's different each time, and it really helps to have something to sing along with. Just like any other thing where you're memorizing a Rossini finale or something like that.
Right.
It helps to sing along.
When we did Everest, so it's the tragic story of these guys who went on the Everest, and one of them died, but before he died was able to have a phone call with his family. How much did the piece emotionally impact you? What is it that was for you, so strong in the piece? And how did you cope with these emotions while you still had to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 now, and being on pitch and fight the orchestra and avoid to watch the conductor where you didn't have to and watch him when you had to, and so on and so on?
Yeah, well, that's the big trick, isn't it? I mean, that's the huge challenge. And it was especially challenging in Everest because the character I played, Rob Hall, is the person who died on the mountain. And he's the person who has a phone call with his wife who's in New Zealand across the world. And she is pregnant she's 7 months pregnant with her daughter, whom he names in their final phone call in the opera. At the time, I was Rob's age, I think, when we premiered. I think he was 35 when he passed, how old I was. And my daughter was 1.5. So
Oops.
there's lots, you cannot help but think about, oh my God, I cannot imagine what it would have been like to be where he was when she was 7 months pregnant and never know her and, have this distance. So I could not ever sing that section, which is high and floaty and very meant to be like beautiful and esoteric. And I could not do that if I were thinking about my own personal experience. I mean, you kind of have to, at least I have to sort of the audience has to feel that. I think I have to make the audience feel that loss and that pain and that suffering. If I feel it, personal opinion, I think it's a little selfish, one, and two, I couldn't do it. I mean, my voice would like you can't sing that with a lump in your throat and crying and everything. I mean, it's right. Unimaginable sadness. I mean, I can't even begin to try to think what those people felt as they were doing that. I mean, I have to begin to try because I have to convey it, but conveying it outwardly is different than feeling it here while you're doing it. So in preparation, talk about dramatic preparation, you have to, that's the pre-work. That's what goes on before. You feel it, you think about how that felt in the learning of the role, in rehearsal, before you get there. And then when you're doing it, you have to convey that. And there's all these other things that happen too. I mean, I'm sitting in this position in a cube with a winter coat on. I'm dripping sweat. I mean, at this point, I'm so hot by that point because it's the end of the show. So you're just thinking about how am I positioned in a way that I can get my breath under me, and how do I look? Am I in the light? Just all these things that happen when you're on stage that I don't, that you can't advertise to the audience, but that's like what's going on in a lot of our plays. Right. Doing these intensely emotional parts.
Right. What was? I mean, probably it's the kind of question I don't like when people ask it to me, but what was your favorite role ever or experience on stage ever?
Oh, that is such a tough one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It tends to be like what I'm really working on at the time. I mean, and I've been lucky to say that. I haven't done a lot of shows where I'm like, oh God, when is this going to end? Right. So, I mean, certainly Rob, the Everest has been one of the most important operas of my career. I mean, it really led to a lot of stuff for me, and I love doing it. I love the physical challenge that pairs with the vocal challenge. That's my kind of thing. So that's definitely it's up there for me. I love that show. I love doing Tamino. That's when I just like that role.
Tamino,
I love Tamino. Another one I've done a bunch is, especially recently, is Tony from West Side Story. That was such a fun role to do too. And so I don't know. I don't think that I have a favorite.
Okay.
And I never really did. I don't know. I like the variety. I like to, have the opportunity to do all these different characters. Barbara Seville, that's another one of my favorites too, because you get to actually, instead of being the prince that's all serious all the time, you actually get to take part and like get some laughs. I love that about Almaviva.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, Andrew, you have so many different, characters and talents to you, and I think it's an amazing asset, and I think it's going to help you for your future career, which I know will be absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for the time today.
It's been a pleasure.
Go back to the teaching, and I hope you can still trick your daughter in having her believe you are Miss whatever her name is.
Miss Thomas. Right?
Yeah. Okay. You have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right. You too. Thanks for talking to me.